This evening, a St. Paul lawmaker is announcing his bid for mayor. Democratic State Senator Randy Kelly is announcing his intention to succeed Mayor Norm Coleman, who will not seek another term. Kelly has represented St. Paul at the Capitol for the last decade. Other opponents include former City Council member Bobby Meagard, who announced her candidacy last month. Past and present council members include Jay Beninoff, Jerry Blakey, and Bob Long. They're also all said to be interested in St. Paul's top job, along with City Licensing Director Bob Kessler.
Owatonna native Don Laughlin is back. Who is he? He's the Nevada casino owner who wants to open a state-run casino here in Minnesota. A bill could be introduced in this year's session, but it's already drawn opposition from some of the major players, including Senator Jim Vickerman, chair of the committee that oversees gaming legislation. He says the bill would not make it out of his committee.
Before our next three guests and myself, tomorrow is like Christmas Day, our birthdays and New Year's all rolled into one. Like Christmas, there's a lot of people running around. Like our birthday, we're the center of attention. And like New Year's, we all end up with a big old headache. The 2001 legislative session opens tomorrow at the Capitol, and tonight we'll preview this third stanza of the Ventura administration with Capitol reporters. First up, Brian Bax roams the rotunda for the Associated Press. Laura McCullum tours the tunnels for Minnesota Public Radio. You guys getting the alliteration yet? And Jim Ragsdale enjoys each and every governor's press conference for the Pioneer Press. And he also handed out big old wonderful gumballs today. So
and
that got Jim on the panel.
My birthday was on Christmas Day, so
well, I'm a week before Christmas. So
all right.
There we go. Okay, now to our agenda. The governor's legislative agenda. By all accounts, this is pretty ambitious. And so far, it doesn't look like he has put the time and energy. He hasn't met with the speaker yet. I'm wondering first what everybody thinks about, is Ventura willing to invest the political capital necessary to make some of the items happen?
Well, he's got one big strike against him, and that's that he's going to be out of state for 10 weekends in the middle of the session. But
at the same time, last year and the year before that, he sat on his hands until the end and then came back and came out as a winner anyway, so it didn't seem to matter.
He pretty much got what he wanted.
Yeah.
Jim?
I don't know. I mean, last year he had started in midsummer promoting his agenda, which included unicameral, which didn't pass, and reduction in license tabs, which did. And this summer he hasn't, until lately, talked at all about his agenda. So I think he's kind of missed a lot of time when he could have been preparing us for it. But whether he'll take it from here, I don't know.
And bring it to the people. I mentioned he hadn't met with legislative leaders, but how about the taking it to the people? Those are, you know, he says he's a caucus of one, and the people are his caucus, essentially. Is that the route where he could have success if he really brings that and starts pitching it to the people?
Well, I don't know that we've seen him traveling outstate that much, pitching it to the people in the last few months.
And I don't know if the people will actually understand some of the things he wants to do. The property tax proposal is pretty complex, and they might not have the appetite to sit there and weed through it like the lawmakers have to.
Because when he did get that group of citizens together to look at the property tax system, they didn't recommend huge reforms. Remember, they recommended some tweaking, but once they understood the system, they said, oh, this kind of makes sense. So.
But it's a very complicated, interrelated series of changes, which probably could, I mean, it may be a great plan, but it will require a lot of selling. And so far, the session starts tomorrow. We haven't really seen much at all.
Now, he does have the State of the State.
But what happens
tomorrow,
the week after the State of the State?
Right. Then he's on
vacation. Isn't that right?
Well, aren't we all?
No, no. Okay. How about let's leave the governor alone for a minute, maybe move on and move on to some of the issues. Obviously, some of the big issues have to be, what are they going to do with the
money?
Surplus? Yeah, the money, a big boatload of money. And some people are saying, you know, it's maybe not necessarily a blessing. It's a lot easier when times are tight and there's more fighting than ever. Tax cuts, obviously, a certainty.
Oh, yeah.
Rebates. Do you think there's any chance Senator Moe with his endowment concept, is that going to happen?
Well, I think a lot of people looked at him funny when he first came out with this, that you know, you don't want to give the people back the money, but as the December forecast came in from various economic indicators and they found out that the economy's not so hot anymore, maybe he'll get a second look.
Plus, Senator Moe, we were talking to him today, and he said in his district, people say, instead of giving me back a few $100, why don't you fix the road, the school? I mean, in his mind, there's a constituency for popular state programs such as transportation and education, as well as for an instant rebate. Permanent tax cuts being a little bit different. I think people are more understand that, but so he's not as interested, I think, in a one-time rebate as maybe some of the other players are.
But isn't that concept DOA almost, because in this tripartisan government we've all covered
exactly.
now the past couple of years, 2 against 1, 2 win.
Exactly, and that's what the Republicans keep saying. We have the governor on our side on this one, so, you know.
But
Mo's
everybody always
idea.
seems to come away with something they want in this arrangement. I mean, you saw it last time. It's not going to work out the same way where everyone takes a third and goes home, but things work out funny.
Well, and it could be, too, that, you know, Mo's long-term goal is not necessarily that the entire rebate be set aside, but that, you know, a bigger portion of perhaps the ongoing surplus be set aside for his priorities. He'll get some of what he wants, clearly.
Brian mentioned the famous third deal. Do you think there's any chance
No.
something like that might happen again?
No.
No way.
No?
I do.
Regs?
I do. Because I think, I'm not attacking you, Brian. No, I do, because I think that they will have a hard time kind of not doing it. I mean, they sort of set a weird precedent from last year, and it will be sort of the,
It might.
But
the
wasn't
place,
the
the
reaction...
default that everybody goes back to.
It
That's
might
right.
not-
Isn't,
it might
isn't
not-
it the fallback point?
It might
wasn't
not
the
be so
reaction
round,
universally
but
detested?
it might not be so delicately woven that everyone gets an equal chunk, but everyone will get something that they want.
Right.
That's
But I just think the reaction was so so negative to the third that I think they'd have a hard time selling it.
How about the alignment? In the past, we've seen Governor Ventura's best friend being Senate Democrats, and they've been lining up, and all of a sudden he is sounding very much like a Republican and saying, I'm for income tax across the board, and lining up on slowing down spending. Is that the alliance we're going to continue to
Well,
see?
and Republicans are loving this because
Oh,
they've always felt like they were the odd man out for the past 2 sessions or for the past 2 years, and now they're all of a sudden sensing they have an ally in the governor. But Senate Democrats say, well, we've been hearing some indications that some of our priorities might be in the governor's budget. So I think until we see the details of his budget, it's hard to know, really.
How about the
lines up?
details?
You know, that's probably where I think there will be a lot of controversy when he tries to impose a very strict cap on spending at a time when I know at least the Democrats would like to address what they consider pressing needs in education, health care, transportation. And the governor is going to propose a very quote-unquote Republican budget. And it'll be interesting to see the dynamics then. That you would think the Republicans would be pretty much on his side.
Well, he made a pretty good pitch to these local officials when he made this budget presentation in St. Cloud a month ago that said, basically, let's not raise spending in a time when we have so much, because when we don't have as much, it's going to be tough to keep up with those obligations. So he might have some luck there.
There's a lot of ambiguity about people putting numbers and specifics yet. Do you think everybody's holding off till they get the February forecast, thinking that that November forecast was now finally too rosy after everybody complaining about it not being rosy enough, and worry about that money really being there, the out money beyond in the coming year?
Well, I think what's interesting is that House Republicans are taking a different tack this time. They have always been the ones out first with this very detailed, 10-point bulletin of their priority list, and they basically said, we learned from our Senate colleagues and from Governor Ventura. We're going to, not show our hand too early, because then we tend to not get what we want, and it hurts us in negotiations. So now everyone's being vague, which of course the press corps hates.
Yeah,
but
we had no press conferences today,
Right.
the day before the legislative session begins.
Well, I think that's partly a concession by Speaker Swigum to some of the members in his
Right.
caucus who were a little bit troubled by them laying out everything in advance last time, and I think he's willing to be a little more controlled to keep his control of
Doesn't he have a little more difficulty this year with a slightly narrower majority
Right.
and perhaps a slightly more conservative caucus where, it seems like it's going to be harder for him to make the kind of compromises like we've just been talking about that you have to make in May to bring it all together. It just seems like he's in a very difficult position.
and 2 votes, and he can't pass a bill.
Yeah.
Two of his members defect.
We'll find
and he
out
can't.
tomorrow. He still has to get the 68 votes to become
Right.
speaker, so it'll be interesting.
You don't have any
problem with
doubt
that?
that that's going to happen?
I'm not going to say for sure, because I really don't know. With these members, it's...
Will certainly be one of the stories to watch, is Speaker Swigum trying to keep the Republican caucus. Okay, here's the part I want to end on. People today are already saying this is going to be a slow session, a long session. And even the word special session, we haven't even gone in yet, and people are talking about special session.
Can't every session be special?
It's special to us, Jim.
It's special to us.
We're going to go around special session, yes or no, before it even begins. Laura McCullum.
Oh, that's not even fair.
Oh, but it's fun.
Okay, no.
No.
The governor says no way.
And it's the governor's discretion, isn't it? All right, thank you, reporters. Good.
Minnesota officially has 3 new lawmakers in Washington. This afternoon, Mark Dayton was sworn in as Minnesota's newest U.S. Senator. Vice President Al Gore did the honors. Mark Dayton dead last in seniority in the Senate. Fellow Democrat Betty McCollum was sworn in as Minnesota's 4th District Representative. And Republican Mark Kennedy sworn in as 2nd District Congressman.
University of Minnesota President Mark Yudof has been tapped by the Bush administration to serve on an educational issues panel. Yudof says his priorities include increased funding for research. He'd also like to make sure that income is not a barrier for students seeking higher education.
Political reporter Mary LaHammer, she's live at the Capitol on this, the first day of the session 2001. More than pomp and circumstance today. Mary, where do you want to begin?
Well, we have a lot for you tonight, Ken, but first you might notice that we're here in the Senate gallery. This place might look a little bit different than the place we did our live shots last session. That was in the House, but right now the House is all locked up because the governor is in there practicing his State of the State address, which he will deliver tomorrow. But of course, the news of today is the opening day of the 2001 session, which also marks the halfway point in this tripartisan governmental experiment of which we're the only in the nation. Let's start in the Senate, where a new president was presiding over the body in the Senate. He was Senator Don Samuelson. Don Samuelson from Brainerd, a DFLer, and he is succeeding Senator Alan Speer, who decided not to run again this year. Then over in the House, you'll see Steve Swigum there shaking hands. He was reelected as the Speaker of the House pretty much on party lines after defending his Republican majority.
I respect each and every one of you in relationship to where you come from and where we come to. Folks, my hope today is that we will be able to seize upon the opportunities that are before us this next 2 years. Carpe diem is that Latin word. The only 2 Latin words I know, I use a lot. Carpe diem, seize the day, seize the opportunity. That's what's before us. And semper fi, the Latin phrase for always faithful. I will always be faithful to this House, to my family, and to Minnesota.
But Speaker Swigum has some DFLers in the House awfully angry at him for not honoring their request or top wishes for committee assignments. Here's House Minority Leader Tom Pugh on that.
So I'm not sure what's caused this. It looks political, looks like a power move. We're going to show these Democrats, we're not going to listen to them. And that's the frustration, because at this time of the session, we're at the very start of a session that can be quite divisive. A big surplus, talk about major tax reform by the governor, talk of a need for major investment in our schools, our healthcare systems. It's going to take some work across party lines to make things happen the right way for Minnesota's families, and this is a bad start for that process.
That's what I was going to say. What kind of tone does it set? Speaker Swigum claims in the newspaper today that when he called you to talk about this, or you called him to talk about this, that he was sworn at and hung up on, and he doesn't seem very happy right now, and I'm not thinking you are either.
We don't sound like bosom buddies today, do we? And I'm generally very easy to get along with and pretty hard to rile. But when I saw 65, 70 changes in committees at that time, I was quite upset. And I was expecting the Speaker perhaps in advance to have said, I've got some real problems here because of, and giving me some reasons. I went through the same process we have previously in making these appointments. I had a conversation after what I saw as lame excuse after lame excuse about why he made so many changes. I terminated the conversation. It wasn't a hang up. I wished him good luck on his own this year.
Would you say this is the most upset you've been as minority leader, like you say, but you're usually a very mild, calm kind of guy. Is this the most upset you've been since serving in this post?
I think that's probably true. It's the biggest slap in the face of Democrats since I've been here.
We are dealing with a minority leader that swore at me and hung up the phone. I think there'll be an apology, or ought to be an apology, coming from that end. You don't swear at someone and hang up the phone.
Are the committees set?
The committees are set.
There's not going to be any changes?
Well, there might be a few massages here and there. There might be a few additions, or I won't say it's completely set. But if you look at the committee rosters, they are very, very balanced, representative of this body. Gender, geography, and the positions on issues, principles.
Again, this could be a problem for Speaker Swigum because Republicans only have a 1-vote margin in the House. And also, speaking of bickering over committee assignments today, in the Senate there was arguing in a similar tone, talking about committee assignments and committee exclusions. But the other big story up at the Capitol today, Governor Ventura is no longer the only member of the Independence Party. Senator Bob Lassard, who had left the DFL and had said he was leaning towards the Republican Party, said just last night he decided he was going to join the Independence Party. Here's the governor and Senator Lassard.
I've been around for 24 years. I know the process works. I've been somewhat successful, some of my initiatives. Not all people are going to be happy with what I've done here today, but I have talked to some other legislators, and I think they understand why I'm doing this. I'll make it clear to every single one of them in the House, in the Minnesota State Senate and the House, that any way I could be of assistance, they want to talk to you, my door is open. And that's the way I see myself. I think what's happening here with the public, they see the governor on one side and the legislative branch on the other, and all we do is read about the newspapers. And I want to see what I can do to stop that. I think that's what the people expect, and that's one of the main reasons I did this, along with agreeing with the governor, and I think that we can come through with some very good positive legislation. But that's something that's got to be said. We got to start working together to pass something and not just sit here and throw brickbats at it, throw our bombs back and forth across the aisle.
Senator Lassard is a very independent individual. He has a lot of courage. For a person to be a member of the Democratic Party and yet to clearly come out and endorse President-elect Bush took a great deal of courage to do that. But he's a man that stands by what he believes in. It's always good to have someone on board with me who gives me access to the president. I don't mind that, and because there's a lot you can get done when you have that access. So no, I think that the senator has shown tremendous independence, if you want to use that word. He's an independent person who's going to stand up for what he believes in, regardless of party affiliation, and I think he's custom made for the Independence Party of Minnesota. He's a perfect fit for us because that's what a lot of us are. I mean, people are sitting back here today shocked that he's left the DFL and joined the Independence Party. I think you all have to remember that a great majority of the people in the Independence Party are former Democrats and Republicans.
Now, Senator Lassard becoming the first Independence Party member of the legislature is not the only history being made by the 2001 legislature. Women are making history. Right here in the Senate, there are more women serving than ever before. Some of those women gathered today to mark their accomplishment. Here's a look at that.
Women tend to think just slightly different than men do, and so we bring a different perspective in. It allows for some talk and conversations that might not otherwise go on.
You've got 4 new freshmen and they're all women.
Yes, and we're over the 40% mark again.
We are touting it, Dean, yes.
And speaking of diversity, there is more diversity in the House and Senate. The House has the first black woman to ever serve, and the Senate has the first Asian male. Finally, it wouldn't be an opening day without a protest, and of course there was one today in the Capitol Rotunda. We'll take a look at that. It was the Minnesota Welfare Rights Coalition. They urged lawmakers to stop the clock on the 5-year time limit placed on welfare recipients. Now that clock runs out quite soon, July 2002. The coalition says thousands of Minnesotans will be forced off welfare, and they're most concerned about some of the children that will be forced off welfare. Well, Ken, opening day of the session usually full of optimism and hope, and here we're looking at another almost $1 billion surplus and surpluses in the future, and kind of a contentious day.
Yeah, very quickly, Murray, the spat between Swigum and Pugh sounds like it can be patched up. Swigum gets the apology, a couple of committee assignments get redone, but how serious is that long term?
Well, I asked, and you probably heard this earlier, I asked Representative Pugh, is this the most angry you've ever been since you've served as minority leader? And he said, yes, indeed he is. But Swigum says he had a couple of DFLers come up to him and thank him for his committee assignments. He was just looking out for gender and geography and balancing that out. So it's hard to say whether this, people were just getting some of their frustrations out on the first day. Maybe it will settle down, but both chambers today pretty contentious.
The hand-wringing over the Stillwater Lift Bridge has been going on for years, but an end may be near. Interior Secretary Bruce Babbitt has said that any of the 3 proposals submitted to his office could get the green light. Those plans include tearing the bridge down, turning it into a pier, or using it as a walkway. One way or the other, transportation officials from both Minnesota and Wisconsin say a new bridge needs to be built. Environmentalists are concerned about the impact a new bridge would have on the scenic riverway.
All right, the fallout continues from the closing of the LTV taconite plant in Hoyt Lakes, where thousands of lives will be affected. Today, one union official said he had hoped the company would find an alternative to closing the plant. Meanwhile, state economist Tom Stinson said that U.S.-made steel just isn't competitive and that the taconite industry in general is in trouble. With that, joining us tonight by phone from Virginia, Minnesota, Bill Hanna, editor of Mesabi Daily News. Bill, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. How are you doing?
All right. I know reporters have been asking workers this all day, but I got to ask you, what are people saying? How do they feel? What's the mood up there? Tell me what's going on.
There's a finality that's set in. It is not despair. It is not devastation. We're resilient people up here. It's a resilient area. But there is a finality that's set in, and there is a strong feeling that the American worker, in this case the iron ore worker, has had its back stabbed by Washington. There is imported, subsidized steel that has flooded this marketplace for 8 years. It's not everything that deals with the closing here, but it has gone on, and it has not been a fair playing field.
All right. From talking to some of the workers, anybody mad at the company? I mean, this closing came a bit earlier than people were expecting.
Yeah, I think especially the way it was handled lately. First of all, it was going to be mid-2001. Then all of a sudden, it was going to be February 24th. Then the company was asked, are you going to file for bankruptcy? No. Then there was filing for bankruptcy. Then all of a sudden, the rumors started circulating, and the closing is going to be the last shift this Saturday. So, it comes down to how it was handled. Obviously, when 1,000 people lose their jobs, there aren't going to be, kisses blown to the company.
All right, you talked about Washington. What's the feeling about lawmakers here in Minnesota? There's been a lot of talk, some would say lip service, recently about let's boost more things up on the Iron Range, let's get more things going. People are waiting for that to happen now?
Well, yeah, there's 2 things that's really important this session, and this is what we have said editorially, and we're going to keep saying editorially, hopefully until it comes about. Whether that does any good or not, I don't know. We need an extension of unemployment benefits for LTV workers beyond the 26 weeks. Some of those 40 people were laid off in August. They're already going to come due in February, so it needs to be done with some urgency. And beyond that, there needs to be a longer window on the unemployment benefits so that these families have some time to get the jobs up here. Number 2, if I could go on just for a second, there is a lot of hope that the governor will include some funding in his budget for economic development on the East Range. This area has been there when there's been an agricultural crisis. It has been there when there's been a Northwest Airlines. It has been there for inner city. Hell, it was even there for the Target Center and the Wild.
All right. Bill Hanna, always a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot.
All right, Governor Jesse Ventura took center stage on day 2 of the legislative session, delivering his State of the State address this afternoon. A joint session of the House and Senate met to hear Ventura's agenda for the second half of his term. Newsnight's Marla Hammer has extended sound from the speech and legislative reaction from the Capitol.
In the governor's State of the State address delivered here in the House chambers, Ventura outlined what he calls his agenda for change, which includes reforms in education, telecommunications, and taxes. Specifically, overhauling the property tax system, broadening and lowering the sales tax, and a 0.5 percentage point income tax cut across all 3 brackets.
It's been an interesting 2 years in the state of Minnesota. And it's been a good 2 years. How do I know that? The people told me. In the last 2 years, I've traveled to every corner of this state and listened to the people. And so while I have a ton of statistics to prove that the state of the state is good, I come here today with something even better than numbers. I come here fortified with the hugs, the smiles, and the encouraging words of the people. I will propose that the state take over the full costs of K-12 general education formula and eliminate the state-mandated general education levy by local school districts. Combined with other changes to the property tax system, this will result in a net property tax relief of over $800 million annually to all types of property across Minnesota, including double-digit percentage property tax reductions to businesses, homes, apartments, farms, and cabins. Increases in my budget for K-12 education spending will be limited and targeted. My budget will include options that propose to facilitate alternative ways of paying teachers and alternative pathways to teaching. This last biennium, with tripartisan support, we increased K-12 spending by $1.3 billion. Still, most local school districts would like much more. But I am skeptical because I believe that most districts have not shown taxpayers the benefit of the last budget increase. And so, to the people of this great state and to the elected leaders in this room, I submit this very ambitious agenda. I promised the people that I would have the courage to challenge the status quo and shake up the system. I believe that this agenda fulfills that promise, and I believe it does it in a very responsible manner. As the business of this body begins, we can choose to debate these bold reforms that are so important to the people of this state, or we can choose to focus on the personal, the political, and the petty. My commissioners, my staff, and I worked very hard to develop these important reforms. Let us move forward to debate them. And I will finish by this. I will dedicate the State of the State address to my aunt who passed away and will be buried tomorrow. God bless you, Aunt Betty. Thank you very much. Thank you.
I love the governor's message. As Republicans, we look at the governor's message and say, you know, we're going to lighten the load on taxpayers in Minnesota.
Are you surprised? Like I said, Republicans were clapping constantly, standing up constantly, very different than 2 years ago.
Oh, well, first of all, the message was something that was warm to our ears. You know, we're going to reduce that tax burden upon the working people of the state. We're going to hold the line on state spending. Some reforms in the area of campaign finance reform, in the area of education reform. You know, it's a message that is very, very dear to us, and certainly, I guess I just want to compliment the governor. Obviously, there was some very, very strong support from the Republican side, and also deafening silence on the Democratic side. I wonder why Democrats don't want to cut taxes on working people in the state.
I still think that our schools, based upon what we hear, they need resources. Now, we'll take a look at his proposal, but certainly I don't think Minnesotans want the legislature to stop investing in one of the things they're most proud of, which is an educated public.
Senator Moe, watching from up above, it was obvious that Republicans were on their feet clapping quite often, and a lot of Democrats were seated and not real happy with a lot of the ideas. Is this symbolic of a schism between the parties?
Oh, I don't know. We'll
on his ideas?
We'll wait and see. You know, they've advocating. You know, as I said, I think this message was a good message. If you pay income taxes in the third tier, if you drive an expensive vehicle, and you have a second home on a lake, his message was a good message. If you're a steel worker that's going to be laid off tomorrow because of the closing of the taconite plant, if you're a senior citizen that's struggling to pay prescription drugs, if you're a college student trying to figure out how to get enough money to go to college, I don't think this was a particularly good message.
We'll know more about the governor's plan January 23rd when he's scheduled to release his budget. At the Capitol, I'm Mary LaHammer for Newsnight, Minnesota.
Saturday in Minneapolis, the 5th annual State of AIDS in Minnesota conference will be held. AIDS advocates from around the region will gather to come up with their legislative agenda. Here tonight to give us a head start on what the agenda might involve, Lorraine Teal, head of the Minnesota AIDS Project, organizer of the weekend event. Well, Lorraine, as we've talked with folks that are mapping your strategy at the Capitol, from the time of the start of this epidemic, when it was kind of preparing people for death and looking for a vaccine, now folks are living so much longer. And that really has turned a lot of the policy agenda on its head a little bit, hasn't it?
Absolutely. We have more folks living with HIV in the state of Minnesota than we've ever had before. And yet we're still left with some of the first and earliest impressions we have of HIV. The first impression we ever had was that this was a contagious disease and we didn't know how it was transmitted. And unfortunately, that stuck in a lot of people's minds. And we have done not as well as we could with general HIV awareness throughout the state of Minnesota. So now we face enormous issues of stigma and discrimination.
Who are the groups that you're most worried about nowadays when it comes to HIV infection?
Well, we continue to be worried most in Minnesota about predominantly men who have sex with men, gay, bisexual men, as well as individuals from communities of color, particularly from the African American community, and most importantly, from the African American community, we're seeing alarming numbers of women infected with HIV.
You know, I was talking to a young gay man recently, and he said, you know, AIDS nowadays is kind of like a chronic condition, and he had it. He just didn't have the. Didn't think about safe sex at all, which I was kind of surprised about. Are you worried about this young generation coming up?
Absolutely. We need to redouble our efforts again and reach out and do a much better job with particularly younger gay men, as you're talking about, as well as gay men throughout the state. But the issue of stigma continues to hold us back. Stigma not only obviously affects the person living with HIV, who may face discrimination and may face differential treatment from those around them, but more importantly, stigma prevents us from doing a good educational piece throughout the state of Minnesota, because people still perceive HIV incorrectly as a deadly, highly contagious disease, which it isn't. We know how the disease is transmitted, and we know how to prevent the transmission.
How will the health care debate affect your community in the coming legislative session?
Well, we certainly are concerned about the issue of access to care and, importantly, the issue of medical privacy. Medical privacy is a very important issue, again, tied back to the problem of stigma.
You know, during the last election, prescription drugs and the prices of prescription drugs was a huge topic. How much of that issue spreads over to the HIV community, AIDS community?
Well, certainly a large piece. As you well know, individuals living with HIV are living longer and healthier lives because of the advantages that some of these medications bring. However, they also bring with them extremely dangerous and toxic side effects like high lipid levels, heart attacks, other kinds of life-threatening medical conditions. And the cost of those drugs is enormous for an individual facing a lifetime of living with HIV.
Well, good luck with the conference. Glad you came down to tell us about it. Good luck in the session.
Good.
Thanks.
First, it was going to close in the summer, and then it was February, and then suddenly it was this week that the LTV Corporation shut down its taconite plant in the town of Hoyt Lakes. Today, after more than 40 years and 300 million tons of taconite pellets, the LTV Steel Corporation stopped production. While some will continue to work to keep the plant winterized, most of the 1,000 LTV workers will see their last check sometime in February. It's all part of an American steel industry in trouble. Some experts believe that by the end of this year, half of American production will be under Chapter 11 bankruptcy. That's a concern to both of our next guests. David Foster is the regional director of the United Steelworkers, a union that represents LTV's rank and file. Also joining us, John Remington, who follows the steel industry for the U of M's Carlson School of Management. Well, David, I'm going to start with you first. How dire is the situation on the range?
Well, obviously we lost 1,000 jobs at LTV. There was an announcement of further cutbacks at North Shore Mining, U.S. Steel in Silver Bay. U.S. Steel has announced cutbacks. And frankly, we expect further cutbacks at other operations as we go forward as well as in the steel industry. And in many ways, it's a worse crisis than what the industry faced in the 1980s.
Why so?
Well, today the steel industry has almost no capitalization anymore. They've been abandoned by the financial markets. And in terms of the pressure and pricing that is being brought by illegally dumped and illegally traded steel in this country, the industry has very few resources with which to reorganize itself. So in my lifetime of 25 years in the Steelworkers Union, this is the most serious crisis that the industry has faced.
Is this, Professor, just an inevitable result of globalization or other factors at work?
Well, I don't think it's that simple. Certainly there hasn't been any indication that I've seen that many of the steel companies in this country made significant investments in their plants. The machinery, the manufacturing process became somewhat outdated. It was heavily labor dependent, and they're in part to blame for the fix that they're in. This can't be solely blamed on dumping, although dumping, as Mr. Foster says, is a major factor.
Well, was industry caught flat-footed?
Well, I disagree to a certain extent with John. I think his criticisms of the industry were very accurate in the 1980s, and as a result of that, the industry rationalized. We obviously lost over 200,000 jobs in the steel industry at that time, but during the 1990s, the American steel industry became as labor productive as the industry anywhere in the world, and certainly in terms of the productivity of American steelworkers, it was on a par with anything you'd find in Japan or Germany. What has happened that's very different, though, is that our country has a trade policy that does not protect the American steel industry and instead opens our markets to illegally dumped. And by that I mean other countries are allowed to come into the United States, sell steel at prices below their own cost of production, or below the cost that they sell it in their own market. No other industrialized country allows its steel industry to function in that kind of an environment. And it is one of the great black marks against the Clinton administration in our union's view that he took no steps to try to protect what is the core industry in the United States, really the core industry of any industrialized society. And we're now at a crossroads where we as Americans simply have to decide, do we as a social policy want to have control over this key industry in our own society?
Do we need it for international security reasons or economic reasons, or do we need to have a traditional steel industry?
Well, I think we need it for a lot of reasons. Certainly it's been part of the basic production process in this country for many, many years, and has provided lots of good jobs and lots of income. But simply in terms of our own national future, I think a major country, a country this size, without a steel industry is in serious trouble.
Is that possible?
I think it's possible.
What's to be done then?
Well, I think kind of globalists who view production as kind of a commodity trading apparatus that can be moved from country to country have no problem with shutting down the steel industry in this country. But for those of us who are concerned about democratic control over our own economy and see a connection between our ability to have a democratic society in its fullest aspects, we simply can't let our economy globalize to the extent we no longer have control over it.
What would be some solutions, Professor?
Well, certainly a step toward an industrial policy or national industrial policy that attempted to determine what role the steel industry, if any, should have in the future. A systematic attempt to protect domestic producers from unfair competition. I mean, it's past being unfair.
Mm-hmm. Well, our union thinks that there are three things that ought to be done very, very quickly. Number one, for the next 5-year period, we really ought to control the amount of imports that come into the United States back to the level that they were in 1997, which amounts to about 20% of steel consumed in the United States. Secondly, we've got to have a federal government program to allow steel companies to get access to capital markets again. One of the problems with LTV is that they simply have been abandoned, as many of the other steel companies have been, by Wall Street. Nobody will lend the money anymore for modernization. LTV very nearly liquidated last week as a result of the refusal of Chase Manhattan Bank to provide debtor-in-possession financing. Lastly, there's no other steel industry in the world that is required to pay for the cost of its retirees' health insurance. The American steel industry generally has 5 retirees for every active employee. For instance, at LTV Steel, 18,000 employees working, 70,000 retirees, retired steelworkers depending on them for retiree health insurance. We need to socialize that cost.
Can the state, Professor, do anything to help, say, an LTV or a Mintac?
Nothing really. I mean, there are some short-term Band-Aid solutions that the state could approach, certainly in terms of job training, in terms of trying to provide alternatives for employment in the Iron Range. That's something that's within the state, but the state can't solve the problem of the steel industry.
What about your workers, the men and women who are out of a job and they've been working in the mines for years and years? What can they do right now up on the range?
Well, there obviously are occasionally other economic opportunities opening up, such as the Northwest Airlines jobs that have opened up. But we certainly haven't given up on the taconite industry, and we intend to press hard at the Minnesota legislature about some things that we think can be done. Number one, we raise a lot of money through mining taxes in this state. We think that there ought to be an economic incentive package put out that can try to attract foreign steel companies, if necessary, to look at the reopening and modernization of LTV Steel. So we think financing would be appropriate for that. Secondly, we think there needs to be a really state-supported effort by Great Lakes states in the Great Lakes Basin where steel manufacturing is still being done to invest in blast furnace relines that continues to give a life to the use of Minnesota taconite pellets in blast furnaces. Yes.
Okay. David, we got to
we'll
go.
Watch and see how it goes in this session. Learned a lot tonight. Thanks for coming down.
Great.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thanks. Now, NFL Commissioner Paul Tagliabue is in town to see the game and to do some schmoozing over at the Capitol on behalf of the Vikings and their new stadium quest, and he really put the kibosh on the Metrodome over at the Capitol today.
The reality is simple. Dome stadiums such as this, dual-purpose dome stadiums, are dinosaurs. So I don't think there's any real question about the need for a new facility. The real question is what I said before, twofold. Number one, should it be a joint facility optimized for the Vikings and the university's team? And secondly, what's the best mix of public and private investment that can get it done?
Vikings and Gophers link arms for an on-campus stadium.
Well, they've been talking about that, but I don't think that's something that's going to happen. I think the money basically is, they've already made a decision that the money is going to be used, according to a very good source of mine, $75 million of it is going to go to fix the Metrodome up to make it better for the Twins. And the rest of the money, about $100 million or so, is going to go to help build that new on-campus stadium for the Gophers, and the Minnesota Vikings are going to be out of here.
Well, where are they going to go? Wait a minute. Where would they go?
Well, they will find somewhere, and I think San Antonio will be a place for them because right now this football team, they've made it very clear, regardless of who's owner, when it was Roger Hedrick, since Red McCombs has been owner for 3 years now, that they need a new stadium. The commissioner is here not representing the Vikings, he's here to represent the league, to let Minnesota know this is the league's policy. And I think he made that clear today to the legislation, and I think they made it clear to him as well that they are not going to build a stadium.
Until Wednesday of this week, Governor Ventura did not have a single formal ally in the legislature. All that changed this week when longtime state Senate DFLer Bob Lassard announced that he was joining Ventura's Independence Party. Lassard won election last fall as an unaffiliated independent. Bob Lassard has represented International Falls in the legislature since 1976.
Long time.
Long time. Why did you do this?
Well, first off, I'm looking at our two coats.
Very nice. You got the
Are you
memo.
trying to dress like me or
Absolutely.
me like you?
Well, I want to be like the newsmakers.
Or just class always prevail. Why did I?
Why did you do this?
Well, you know, there's a number of reasons that I did it. the long version or the short version. But I think if I had one answer that I could give, I've been watching now for a couple of years the bombs going back and forth between the legislative branch and the executive branch back and forth. And I honestly felt that if I could, I told the governor, if I could be some type of a facilitator of at least type of meaningful dialogue so we could pass some legislation and do something instead of reading about the newspaper. And that's what I told the governor. If any way I could be of a help, if I could play a part, I would do so.
Do you think you're a good facilitator of meaningful dialogue?
Well, I think the governor needed it, and I think that I can help. I'd like to think I can help.
Now, Senator Moe said, he said one thing, he said something to the effect that, at your age, he was delighted you finally found yourself. But he also said if you're expecting the governor to consult with you, you'll be lonelier than the Maytag repairman.
Well, first off, about the age factor, I heard about that. I think it was Winston Churchill once said, if you're not a liberal when you're 20, you have no heart. And if you're not a conservative when you're 50, you have no brains. So I've had it both ways. So I think that I can... what's the second part of your question?
Well, that he was skeptical that Governor Ventura and you would be putting your heads together on a bunch of strategy.
Oh, I think we are, and I think we can, and I think we will. I think we need we got a tax policy that doesn't make absolutely any sense. You tax people on their homes with no ability to pay. You have a cabin up the lake and somebody builds a bigger cabin on one side and a bigger cabin on the other, and you've been trying to keep it your whole life. And the assessor comes along and bing, 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 and you're taxed out. And then they say, well, you can sell it. Well, what if you want to keep it? And what about commercial property? You got a business, you might have recession. Has no relevancy what you're taking in. And of course, we also have the income tax. And I think the governor came up with a very interesting proposal. And
you'll help him work it.
Well, I think something's got to be done. I mean, we haven't done anything since I've been a senator, probably since the turn of the century.
So you plan carrying some of Ventura's bills?
Well, certainly I'm going to, and I'm not saying I know all the answers, but I'm saying that the only way we're going to pass any meaningful legislation if the government demands it. And the government demands it, the people demand it. And they're going to have to let us know. And a stalemate, I know that's what I think the public wants. Look at what's happening in Washington. Do something and quit throwing these bombs back and forth.
You have put a lot of your personal capital on the line the last year or so on this Missouri plan to get money in the Constitution dedicated for conservation-type programming. Did the governor make any commitment to go to bat for you on that?
That bill went through the Environment and Natural Resource Committee unanimously. I mean, it had all the metropolitan legislators. It's a state trail system. It's a metro parks. It's a game and fish. It was a great plan. It went through unanimously. It went to taxes, came out, I believe, 2-1, and then it went over to the Finance Committee. And of course, the leadership at that point put a stop to it. You bet. That's one of the first things. One of the discussions with the governor.
He's for it now.
Yeah, and he absolutely said this in the press conference, and I'm sure you'll be asked this question by the sports writers of the state. And he said he would support that concept. And that was, I'm not saying that was the only reason, but certainly I didn't get that commitment last year. I didn't get to talk to the governor last year. I don't think many people talked to the governor last year. I'm trying to open up that channel. And he definitely gave me that commitment.
Say, have you talked to Charlie Berg yet? I think you two can make a party of two, actually. He's an independent in the Senate. Do you think he could kind of join your little group?
Well, he joined the Republicans. Maybe that's kind of a stepping stone, bing, bing, bing. I don't know which way it goes.
Well, you backed Rod Grams, you backed George W. Bush, you backed Norm Coleman in '98. I mean, you've worked many sides of the fence here. You were a Democrat for 6 years in the legislature?
Actually, technically, I've been a Democrat for 24 years.
Okay.
But I think that probably the straw that broke the camel's back. Of course, I endorsed Mayor Coleman. And
the governor didn't hold that against you?
No, but that was brought up. I'll tell you about that subject. But when I endorsed or gave the opening speech for Governor Bush, I know there were some very unhappy people at the Capitol, but I thought it was the right thing to do as far as northern Minnesota is concerned and what I believe in.
So you knew what you were doing. You knew what you were getting into when you did that.
Well, of course, I'm a big boy. I didn't think I'd get off the Rules Committee. But as far as the second part of your question, one of the things I did discuss with the governor at the onset, I'm a friend of Norm Coleman, Mayor Coleman. We've been friends. I supported him. And he pointed out to me that his lieutenant governor supported Gore. And he said, we're talking about we're not talking about gubernatorial politics here. We're talking about doing something right for the state. And we both agreed that's what we were going to try to do. So that became a non-entity.
Will you come back few weeks here as we get into the session, and we'll check on your progress as the Independence Party minority leader
I
in the
think
Senate?
you're going to be seeing a lot of, hopefully there'll be some progress. I think there'll be, one thing about it will be more interesting.
Well, that's for sure.
I bet it will be.
Glad you came down.
It won't be dull. Maybe we'll get some humor around this place, which we need, okay?
Glad you came down, Senator.
Thanks, Senator. Good to see you.
Thank you. The head of state government spoke for an hour and 10 minutes outlining what he hopes to accomplish in the final 2 years of his term. Almanac's political reporter Mary LaHammer shows us some highlights from this year's address and takes a look back at Ventura's first State of the State to see what he's accomplished so far.
I will dedicate the State of the State address to my aunt who passed away.
There were tears.
God bless you, Aunt Betty. Thank you very much. Thank you.
And ultimately cheers, but reviews were mixed.
We will be looking for a balance. I'm not sure if it meets that test at this stage, but this is the governor's offer. It will now go into the legislative process. We will certainly give the administration every opportunity to explain in more detail what they have in mind.
I think right now I can shake the governor's hand and say we will be able to meet him on his agenda. You know, we'll tweak a few things here and there, but Governor Ventura, House Republicans will be there for you and with you for the citizens of the state.
In an address entitled Bold Reforms for a New Economy, Ventura took on what he called the Big Three: income tax, property tax, and sales tax.
The property tax needs to be reformed so that it is smaller, simpler, fairer, and more truly a local tax. And we can do it this year. We can do it this year. Our income tax rates need to be lowered again for all taxpayers, and we can do it this year. I will propose that Minnesota broaden its sales tax base to include services as well as goods, while continuing to exempt life essentials, exempting them like food, clothing, and heating fuels.
In this year's State of the State address delivered here in the House chambers, Governor Ventura again laid out an ambitious agenda. But how can we judge what he might accomplish? Let's rewind. Let's go back 2 years to Ventura's last State of the State address and see how it was received and what he's accomplished so far. Just months after his stunning victory, there was lots of love in the chamber for the chief executive officer. In 1999, bipartisan applause interrupted his speech 37 times. In a longer speech this year, applause interrupted more than 50 times, but it emanated almost entirely from the Republican side of the chamber.
The legacy of this administration will be provoking people out of their apathy. It's not my job to make people feel comfortable.
Ventura caused plenty of discomfort, but Tour 2000 got him out with the citizenry, and he encouraged young people to vote in appearances all over the state.
The state of the state is that people are very tired of business as usual. One way or another, there will be more than 70% voting at the polls in the next election and the one after that.
Close. Turnout for 2000 in the state was 69%, but in the next non-presidential election, numbers are likely to be lower.
Settle up any actual surpluses with taxpayers at the end of the biennium.
Taxpayers have received rebate checks the past 2 years, and another one is expected this spring thanks to a law requiring the state to settle up.
And a unicameral legislature.
Lawmakers shot down a one-house legislature last session, and it isn't likely to reappear. But this year, he had this warning.
Rest assured, if the legislature fails to reform itself this session, to paraphrase my good friend Arnold Schwarzenegger, unicameral will be back.
Back to 1999's speech.
I want to ride a train by the year 2002.
Ground could be broken this month on the Hiawatha Light Rail line if final federal funding comes through. But a test train would be all Ventura could probably ride by 2002.
3 years from now, I want my State of the State speech to start out the same way this one did. That the state of the state is indeed great and got greater during the Ventura administration.
But just 2 years later, Ventura already downgraded that great to good.
It's been an interesting 2 years in the state of Minnesota, and it's been a good 2 years.
Governor Ventura's 70-minute State of the State address yesterday leaves a lot to discuss. How handy is it that we have a political panel tonight? The governor's party goes first. Jack Aldrich is an Independence Party backer. He's also an assistant state planning director. Tom Horner joins us. Tom is a Republican media consultant. Here, too, is former DFL Speaker of the Minnesota House, Dee Long. Jack, what was the governor hoping to achieve with his speech?
I think what he wanted to do is tell the legislature that he is going to provide leadership, particularly in the area of tax reform, that he laid out a very substantive legislative agenda, and he asked for the legislature's assistance. I think you're really going to see him roll up his sleeves this session and try and advance his legislative agenda.
Dee Long brings us years of experience, including the chairwomanship of the House Tax Committee. Break it down in terms that we can understand. Can this thing float through the legislative process?
I don't think it can float. It might, in the best of circumstances, struggle through. And I think that is only if the governor is willing to hit the road from one part of this state to another and expend that enormous political capital in making sure that the public really wants his tax reform. He's going to have to explain it to them in terms that they can understand, and he's going to have to get them behind it and calling their legislators, because God knows there's going to be an enormous number of pressures from people who don't want some of these things to happen.
What will be the toughest sell for the governor with this plan?
Oh, the sales tax extension. I mean, to expand the sales tax as dramatically as he's proposing with only a 0.5% reduction in it, there's not enough of a trade-off. But I do think the value, particularly if he's willing to go out and about and sell the program, is that he starts discussion around what kind of a tax system should we have. And there's great value to that for the body politic.
I thought one thing that, and two of his commissioners were on his radio show today, and it seems to me they hit upon something that he said yesterday, but didn't stress it as much, is that overall this will be a net tax cut. And it's like $1 billion a year, I think the way Matt Smith described it today on the radio. And Madam Speaker, if you can sell the public that while some sales tax interest groups will get hit, that if everybody else's tax is going on, is that the way to get around all the lobbying pressure, or what's the tactic?
I think so. They're going to have to hear from John and Jane Doe out there that they want this to happen, because they're going to be hearing from all the services that are going to be coming under the tax under the proposal, giving them all sorts of reasons why it shouldn't happen. We've been there before. That was tried, and not very successfully, and there was an enormous amount of pressure.
Can the unmet needs crowd accept this level of spending increase?
Oh, well, if I could,
please, go ahead.
Let me just respond to something, your earlier question. I think that, and the governor and this administration recognizes that we have to provide tax relief in order to get reform, and I think so that $1 billion tax cut is important. But really what's more important is, as Dee said, going out to the chambers of commerce, other groups, and telling them why reform is so important, particularly if we want to be competitive in the 21st century, that we have to reform our tax system. And extending the sales tax is an integral component of that. It's going to be extremely difficult, tough sell, a lot of heavy lifting, but I think the governor and the administration's up for the challenge.
But keep in mind, we haven't seen all the trade-offs yet.
Yeah, we haven't seen all the details.
Exactly. I mean, when you ask will people support it, it's not just the services community, it might be the business community, the rest of the business community, depending on what we see in the rest of the tax proposal. And I think to your question, Eric, the unmet needs, I think there are a lot of people who are saying, yes, we ought to bring some fairness and equity to the tax system. Maybe that means in part some cuts, certainly in the long term, in the permanent income tax rates. But I think there are some unmet needs where we do need some investment, where those issues aren't being addressed by the governor's budget.
What pieces of this? I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, let me just say, I think that it's very important to realize that this tax proposal is a piece of the whole. And if you start pulling things out of it, it's not going to work. He needs all of those elements. People have to be able to understand that, because I don't think the funding is going to be there, for example, for the school takeover, unless we have the sales tax extension.
And the spending limitations.
Yes.
Right. I mean, it's not just the tax revenue, it's the spending side.
And a good February forecast.
Yes.
Right.
That's crucial as well.
Right.
Better than
all
perhaps
of which
we'll have.
says, good luck, Governor.
Well,
what pieces, DeLong, could be passed now that could get the ball rolling toward tax reform overall?
Well, the governor could certainly continue what started in 1997 and has gone on since then, and that is continuing the proportion of the school funding that the state is paying. That's been ratcheted up every year. He's taking more of a giant step in going to 100%, but other things are going to happen for that to occur.
But I think you have to say, what are the issues as a state that we have to face? If you want more affordable housing, maybe you cut the property taxes on rental housing and let the marketplace deal with it. If you want lower health care costs, maybe you deal with not only some of the health care taxes, but some of the mandates. I mean, it is all pieces of a whole, and you have to look at it that way. Simply to say, here's what I'm going to do on spending, here's what I'm going to do on taxes, without looking at what it is that you're trying to accomplish as a state, I think misses the point a bit.
Madam Speaker, take off your partisan hat and put on your custom and usage hat for a minute. Speaker Swigum realigning the committees and rejecting, I think, 65 of the individual Democratic House members' requests, including moving some returning incumbents off committees on which they had served. What did you make of it?
Well, it was, let me see, I think unprecedented in the time that I have been around. Occasionally a speaker will not give somebody their choice of committee, but it's usually a very few people, one or two perhaps. I think it's unfortunate this happened. It got the session off to kind of a bad start in the House. I don't know if any changes are going to be possible, any additional changes or not. I'd like to see it happen.
Is there a real fight here, or is this much ado about nothing?
I think there's a real fight within the Republican Party, and I think there's a real fight within the House, yes. I mean, I think the Republican Party is becoming increasingly fragmented by the tax cut conservatives, who are becoming every bit as rigid as the social conservatives. And someplace there's got to be a meeting in the middle, that we ought to cut taxes. Taxes are too high in Minnesota. We ought to bring some permanent cuts to taxes. But there also are investments that we have to make. We have an elderly population that's doubling. We need to start taking care of those kinds of issues right now.
The governor didn't talk about the energy issue, which certainly for anybody who's been getting their bills is at the forefront of many of our minds. I wish he had talked a little more, or talked at all, about conservation measures, about renewable energy. The Commerce Department is working on these things. I wish he had expanded somewhat and talked about it in his speech. It was a perfect time for a bully pulpit on this.
I mean, I think it would have been appropriate, but I mean, as you already alluded to, it was a 70-minute speech. It was all very long by the governor's standard. And the Department of Commerce and numerous other agencies are doing very substantive work. I mean, when the governor talks about his big plan, it wasn't just in his State of the State speech. That there are a number of other things that are going on behind the scenes. And I know specifically that the Department of Commerce is looking at the impending energy shortage and what we have to do but 5-6 years out.
I'm sorry, Jay, but I mean, sometimes there is a little bit of the left hand not being in concert with the right hand. I mean, he talks about the need to improve transportation. You have the Minnesota Chamber of Commerce coming out and saying, now we need an integrated system of transportation, including transit. And yet the governor's taking another whack at the license tab fee, which takes a whole lot of transportation funding.
Just with seconds left, do we know if this has the potential to be a watershed session, or are the stars not aligned?
I think it does have the potential. Steve Swigum and the House Republicans extended a hand to the governor.
I think it has the potential. I think the governor has to be willing to get out there and work his tail off.
I think exactly. It's a watershed if we start the discussion, and if we look at this as a long-term process, not something that we have to get done this year.
You got us going good, panel. Thanks.